Brendan, when you see the video of Todd Blanche walking through the halls of the DOJ there, who are the folks that were surrounding him that were clapping?
Well, historically, it would be career officials. I've seen a number of those sort of clap-throughs as people are coming into the DOJ and leaving. But I think in this situation, well, for one thing, I see it, that is a very sparsely attended clap-through.
Yeah, usually it's a lot more people.
It's usually the whole DOJ.
Right.
This is a select few people, which suggests that this might be a bit more of a political audience. And I think it speaks to the broader change within the Department of Justice. The fact that you're dealing with, a heavily demoralized DOJ, the career people, by and large, want to keep themselves separate from the politicals right now.
Does anything change now that he's the official AG? The powers are the same, unless you know something I don't know when you're acting or the actual AG. Is it more of a steadiness because now you have a person who maybe isn't going anywhere, except it's Donald Trump's administration, so you can fire anyone at any time? What has changed for the people?
Yeah. From a legal perspective, probably not much. There was an untested legal question about whether an AG could serve in an acting capacity indefinitely. And, if Blanche had not been confirmed, that would have gotten tested. Now that is a moot issue. Aside from what this says about Senate Republicans and the fact that clearly they are not going to stand up to Donald Trump on any level of the increasing politicization of the Department of Justice, I think practically what it means is actually a little bit positive in that, Cornyn and Tillis did try to extract these concessions about the slush fund, right? Mm-hmm. And, Todd Blanche was wishy-washy.
Did they?
Exactly. Yeah.
Did they?
Here's what I think they got.
Please.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
Let me take my...
Oh,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. And you guys have been kind enough to let me be on the show many times. I don't think I've ever said a positive thing about a senator of any stripe. So don't take this as a change of heart. I do think that, while I am absolutely certain that Donald Trump is going to try to push the content or the purpose of the slush fund, the actual form is probably going to be very different from what they originally proposed. I think it's very unlikely that they are going to establish this 5-person committee that has unilateral authority to disperse $1.8 billion. We've talked about this before. Yeah. What's probably going to happen is they're going to settle a bunch of bogus lawsuits from January 6 defendants and other allies of the administration, or settle administrative complaints, which they don't have to publicize. So they might be getting the money out, but the actual creation of the fund seems less likely to happen now.
Okay, if you say so.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's a thing that is different.
I don't trust any of these tickleheads, not one of them. They are liars and cheats, and they've lied to these senators. These senators are gullible, because they don't want to screw their courage to the sticking post, to quote a well-known Shakespearean Shakespeare. And that to me, that's just kind of fanciful thinking. Everybody in this psychodrama has told us who they are.
Right.
Everybody has shared with the American people what they're about. And there's nothing about Todd Blanche that says that when Donald Trump calls him up and says, now, that he doesn't go out and do the now. All of it. And you're right. I think find a bucket to take the money out of. Call it something official that's already existing. But I think at the end of the day, the grift, the reclamation project, if you will, for the January 6th tapes to make them better than they actually were, to somehow think that they were the victims as opposed to the actual victims on that day, from those who died and the families that were affected to the American people writ large. All of that for me should be part of the conversation. So that walk of shame coming into that building today, to me, is a testimony of a failure of this administration and this DOJ to do what is right. And so how do you then, here's the question. You mentioned that was, both of you, sparsely attended. Mm-hmm. What about the rest of the people in the room? Did they just sit back very quietly and kind of do their thing, or what?
Yeah, I've talked with a handful of people that are still in DOJ, and, there are pockets of the Department of Justice that are still doing important and largely nonpartisan work. You're talking about national security investigations, human trafficking, child exploitation, and so forth. There are parts where people are still trying to keep their head down. And, I've had friends say to me, it's like, look, it's really important that those particular people stay in their jobs and not leave. And I think I agree there. The challenge that you have are a handful of departments that are inherently political and becoming even more so.
What are those?
When you're talking about the individual U.S. attorney's offices in D.C., SDNY, Southern District of Florida, where you have, the grand conspiracy investigation and so forth, it's impossible to be in those offices without touching politics right now, it seems like. When you're talking about, this seems a little more obscure, but I think it's important for our economy, for our fairness, things like the antitrust division, which approve mergers. Now suddenly is this tool by which Donald Trump can get enormous power by saying, this deal is going to get approved if you support me, this deal won't get approved if you don't support me, and so forth. So I think it depends on an office by office basis, but at least for a handful of them, frankly, you got to get out if you're going to keep your integrity.
Brendan, I want folks to go back 50 years if we could. And it's not me taking us back, but Monica Crowley. I believe we have a social media post. She is the president's chief of protocol. And she wasn't talking about this Department of Justice, but in a social media post, she wrote, 52 years ago today, the brilliant, courageous, visionary President Nixon resigned from office, the victim of a well-orchestrated deep state coup to remove him. You will learn the truth. The great man will be vindicated. Could you remind folks for a moment how the Department of Justice, ideally through its guidelines, became more independent as a result of the Nixon administration, and what that says about where we find ourselves all these years later?
So after the Nixon administration, there were a series of steps taken to insulate the Department of Justice from White House influence. And that was good for the Department of Justice because it meant that it was pursuing cases in a political way. It was also good for the White House, which meant that these cases were more likely to be successful. But don't forget why we had to have all of those changes. You had a Department of Justice where allegedly people were trying to bribe federal judges, where people were being surveilled without their Fourth Amendment rights, where you had an attorney general actually go to prison for 2 years for committing crimes in the president's name. And these are the people that currently are being celebrated by the administration.